ABIDU makes some of the best third-party controllers out there. And yes, I did my research, and apparently that's how it's pronounced, even though I do really want to say dough. Now, I'm absolutely in love with my Pro 2 controller for my Switch. And when I heard they were making an actual Xbox-style controller for the Xbox and PC, I got pretty damn excited. Now, they do already have an Xbox controller that's styled like the Pro 2, but when I'm playing on my Xbox, I just kind of feel gross using controllers that don't have offset joysticks. Well, the controller is here, and I'm ready to get this thing out of the box. First, so if you can't tell from the front of the box, I decided to go with the pink edition. They announced this around like Easter time, so it's a big collection of these different pastel colors that Xbox is doing with their controllers. I've never had a pink controller, and I don't typically just get a bunch of colored controllers. I appreciate that ABIDU likes to keep their packaging pretty minimal. Ooh, baby, okay. So as we've already talked about the color, it's this pastel pink. It's very clean looking though. I do like this a lot. It's got a little bit of texture on top. It's not a gloss finish, thank God, but then really grippy texture on the back. Like pretty aggressive texture, but I think it feels pretty good. Now immediately we have to talk about the shape of this thing. It's a lot like an Xbox controller, just not as narrow up top. So it almost keeps the sides a little more flat. So it does kind of pull your hands a little bit further away from the triggers than like a normal Xbox controller does, because a normal Xbox controller can kind of get a little cramped up top. Button layout is exactly the same, and then of course the joysticks, they feel incredible. Really good D-pad though. The same D-pad as they used on the Pro 2, so it's very clicky. So we'll go through what all the buttons do later. Obviously it's got your normal Xbox button. It has the share button, what would be your typical menu button, but then this button right here, I already know is going to be used to configure different settings for the controller, because you can actually use the ABIDU app to reprogram this to multiple different functions. This is part of that I really like. On the bottom right here, it does have a headphone jack, but with a slidable mute. So if you're using headphones that can't mute themselves, you have just a really quick, easy to use mute button right there. And then when we look on the back, we have paddles, reprogrammable paddles. Just like, I mean, with your typical Pro controllers, they're not as big and flashy as the Xbox like Elite controller is, but they're very just conveniently easy to push. There you just get two, but they are reprogrammable and remappable to anything you want them to be. Now here's the part about it that I think is going to turn a lot of people off and probably will keep most people from ever buying this controller. It is wired. The only thing that's weird about it though is the fact that they still have Bluetooth functionality. So I don't know why they didn't just go all in and just allow you to be able to use this controller wired or wirelessly. I would have paid a little bit extra for that ability, but it is wired only, and then literally the only function for the Bluetooth is so you can connect to the ABIDU app and reprogram the buttons. Now we talked about the D-pad, but also just all the buttons all the way around are very clicky, and then of course the triggers are... So right now I really like this controller. I really like this controller. I'm gonna go ahead and get it set up. Let's test it out in some games, and we'll see overall what all these weird ass buttons actually do. So we're gonna try out some Rocket League and see if this is a good way to test the controller out. I haven't played Rocket League in a little bit, so I might be a bit of a bot. Yeah, like I said, I can already tell just navigating through the menu, the D-pad feels fantastic. So I really like that. So on the buttons, the only thing I've noticed is that the legend is actually printed on the buttons instead of embedded in it like it is on like a real Xbox controller, so that's kind of lame. Joystick feels really good though. I was kind of wondering, because I know the Xbox controller actually has like a divoted joystick, whereas these are kind of almost like rounded in the middle, but they still have like a really good lip on them. But they feel really good though. Hey, look at that. We've already scored a point, baby. The buttons on the back are pretty easy to actuate. Like you can tap them pretty easy. I don't have them set anything, but if you kind of watch your grip, you won't touch them. But if you're squeezing down the controller, you're for sure gonna accidentally touch them. Unlike a normal Xbox controller, the triggers actually have like kind of this bit of a hook on the back of them, so that you really keep your fingers locked in. It feels really good. Joysticks are so snappy. It's nice not having to worry about batteries. So I did look up in the booklet what the star button is for, and it literally just says star button. It doesn't even tell me what it actually does. You definitely get a lot more heft up top. However, the wings on the bottom where you actually grip onto, they do feel like they're probably a little bit smaller than the Xbox controller, which is very interesting to feel. Hey, redeemed myself, baby. Let's go. The buttons feel great. The only complaint I have about the buttons is the fact that they printed the lettering on top of the buttons instead of embedded it inside. The app, as I've already mentioned, is pretty intuitive, and since this is a wired controller, you don't have to turn the Bluetooth on, so as soon as you open the app, it already recognizes the controller. All you have to do is push the ABIDU button, click on button mapping, and then you can see all the different buttons that you can map around, change to whatever configuration you want. And the only thing I can assume that the star button is just an extra button on top, because it doesn't actually tell me. Quick update, I found out through watching another YouTube video that the star button is actually for on-the-fly button swapping. The more you know. But the other cool thing is you can set 3 different profiles on it. So if you have multiple games that you play and you want a different profile for each one, say if you play Fortnite or say if you play a lot of shooters and you want one of those paddles to be mapped for reload, but then on another game you want it for something else, you have multiple profiles you can switch through to make it easy peasy for you. I'll have the full review coming up in a couple weeks on this controller, but right now, for first impressions, I think I like it a lot. In the meantime though, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, and guys, we are creeping up on 1,000 subs, which is awesome, so make sure if you're not subbed already, you hit that sub button. Now I'm gonna go play some more Rocket League.